through where we are in the internet revolution, because you did it so eloquently in the book in terms of the first wave was about what, and where are we today?
Well, we have made a lot of progress. We started AOL 31 years ago. Only 3% of people were online. They're only online 1 hour a week. And that first wave was just getting people online, building the infrastructure, building the on-ramps, educating people why they should get online, which now seems obvious, but wasn't obvious in those early days. So that was the first wave, just building the internet. The last 15 years, the second wave has been building on top of the internet. So it's been apps and services running on top of the internet, Facebook and Twitter and things like that. And so it's been this app economy. The third wave is really going to take the next great leap, which is to integrate the internet seamlessly and pervasively in every aspect of our lives and change healthcare and education, even things like food. But it's going to require a different mindset and a different playbook for innovators, and that's why I decided to finally write a book.
So a lot of industries get impacted there, right? When you start talking about healthcare, we're all wearing sensors, we're tracking everything.
Absolutely. And oddly, even though everybody thinks a lot has been disrupted so far by the internet, some of the things that are most important to our lives in terms of how our kids learn or how we stay healthy or get well when we get sick, things like that, haven't changed that much. And that's the real opportunity in the third wave. But it's going to require more partnerships. You can't just go it alone. And it's going to require more engagement with government because many of these industries are regulated. So that's why the playbook needs to be different. And part of this is also going to be the small companies figuring out how to partner with the big companies and the big companies figuring out how to partner with the small companies, the startups, to make sure they are relevant and kind of surfing this wave.
I agree with you 100%, Steve. I think, but a lot of people out there don't. A lot of people will tell you, oh, that we're at a bubble. Startup valuations are too high. We're at a bubble. How do you overcome that or get people to see past that?
I would partially agree with that. I think there are some companies in some places and some sectors are a little overvalued. And we think in general, Silicon Valley in the last couple of years has been a little frothy. So our strategy at Revolution, and I have a chapter on this in the book, is called The Rise of the Rest. We love what's happening in California and New York and Massachusetts. But last year, 75% of venture capital went to those three states. And they're actually great entrepreneurs building great companies all over the country in places like Detroit and Chicago and Atlanta and New Orleans and Nashville and Des Moines, and you can go down the list. So our focus is on investing in the entrepreneurs in those places. We're building awesome companies, very third wave oriented in terms of partnerships, policy, but also the valuations are lower in those places because most people aren't focused on them. But once they're successful, they go public. Nobody says, oh, Under Armour should have a discount because they're in Baltimore, or Chipotle should, they're in Denver. When Salesforce bought Exact Target for $3 billion in Indianapolis, Indiana, people say, oh, it's Indianapolis. We should only pay $2 billion. So you kind of get in wholesale if you're a venture investor because they're in these rise of the rest regions. But if they're successful, you get out retail.
Well, and you get much less expensive labor. And how about Florida and Nevada and Texas where there's no
Florida, a lot of things happening. Miami, I'm going to be there in a week or so. There's a lot of things happening. There are things happening in all these different cities. I've now gone on 4 bus tours around the country called the Rise of the Risk road trips, 4,000 miles, a couple dozen cities. And I'm amazed at what's happening in these cities. And most people aren't paying attention to it, whether it be the media or the investors. And that's going to change in the third wave. It's going to be great for these communities because they're going to see more innovation, more job creation. It's going to lift up those communities. But it's also going to be great for the nation to have a more evenly dispersed innovation economy.
Security, robotics, these are some of sort of the danger signs that people talk about in terms of the downside to this revolution. All
true. And there's risks associated with these things. You can't just be a techno-optimist, say technology is going to solve all these problems. Some of these things are going to create new challenges, whether it be around privacy, recent debates around encryption, or with healthcare data. How do you manage that? With education data, if your kids are being tracked to have more personalized, adaptive lessons, that's good. But what then happens with that data, which is why you need, if you want to be an innovator, to figure out a way to have a constructive dialogue with government. Entrepreneurs don't like to hear that because government slows them down and frustrates them. But the reality is, in these third wave sectors, that's going to come with the territory.
That's what I was going to say.
You hope government keeps up.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, where's government's role in this, Steve? Because I mean, what's your take on the business environment right now, especially for some of these startups that kind of have been, Silicon Valley, kind of a friend of D.C., but kind of not now? I mean, what's going on?
Well, I think there's been a divide between the Silicon Valley and D.C., and one of the things I talk about in the book is how you bridge that divide. I have a whole chapter on the disruption of America. I think there's a risk that America itself could lose its edge as the most innovative entrepreneurial nation. So we need to make sure we've got the right policies around investment incentives, around regulations, around immigration, a lot of things that we need to have in place. Otherwise, there is a risk in the third wave that the momentum will shift to other countries. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm optimistic about the future for the country, but if we get complacent, we will lose our edge.
Which industry looks the most different 3 years from today, do you think, as a
3
result?
years is, I think one of the things I talk
what's
about
the
in the book
timeframe then?
is it requires more perseverance. Like AOL was a 10-year in the making overnight
Yes.
success. It took us a long time to finally break through, and then it really skyrocketed. So I think that's going to be the dynamic. The second wave, you did see overnight success. As Snapchat comes out of nowhere, suddenly it's a big force. Third wave is going to require more perseverance. Some I talk about in the book, like healthcare and education. The other one that will surprise people is food. Right now, it's something that everybody, the total addressable market for food is 100% because everybody eats food multiple times a day. And the big food companies are at risk because there's hundreds of startups trying new things with new brands, using technology in new ways to manage supply chain. Even one company we invested in, Sweetgreen, you have now about 25% of people are ordering Sweetgreen on their phones. So the intersection with technology and the rest of the world, real life, is what's going to drive this third wave.
That's a great